Hi everybody, welcome back. In the last video, we talked about the work triangle, which is the number one tool for kitchen design and layout. But is it still relevant to modern life? Let's see. The work triangle was an original idea in the 1950s. It assumes a single cook kitchen and that there are simply three major kitchen centers. Um, and therefore arranging those three kitchen centers for efficiency and comfort of that single cook. All right, seems like a great idea. However, uh, time has marched on, and in modern life, we often want to have multiple cooks, different activities, and all happening all in the kitchen at once. All right. Also, there's been some technology changes. We don't necessarily only have those three key appliances anymore. Um, the stove, which includes the range and the oven, is not always how we want to cook anymore. We might separate those out into the wall oven and a cooktop. We now have a microwave, which is another major cooking element. Didn't exist in the 50s. So, how do we adapt these ideas and how do we continue to provide the best kitchens for our modern clients? So let's talk about a couple of other options. We'll talk about work zones, open concept kitchens, the new kitchen triangle, and secondary work triangles. So work zones. Work zones are really just another way to think of the same workflow concept we've already discussed. And one way to make a large contemporary kitchen work when really the work triangle no longer functions because the kitchen is too large is to use work zones. So you'll define distinct zones for food storage, food prep, and cooking. So still the same three major activities. And you will design a logical relationship between those three, but you might adjust the distance uh, per the room scale. All right. So this is another way of adapting that work triangle idea to a different way of living. Another idea is the open concept kitchen. We have already talked about how the kitchen has moved from the work center to the social center of the home. And open concept kitchen is a big part of this. So one way you can design an open concept kitchen is to define the kitchen boundary with an island. And the island can be used from both sides, from the kitchen side and from it's usually a dining room or living room or family room side for different purposes. Okay. And one thing that works well with this is to put the refrigeration center kind of near the entrance to your kitchen. And so that extra beverage function, because there's always somebody running in to grab a drink, can be fulfilled without getting in the way of the cook. This concept, this open concept, has been widely embraced and is very, very popular. All right, the new kitchen triangle. That's the name of an article that I've asked you to read for this week. And the gist of the idea here is that kitchens has changed over the decades, over the last 50 years. They've opened up, you've got different activities going on, and you've got different technologies. So, the first thing that you should do when you're designing a kitchen is to define each of the features, which might be centers or they might be tasks and activities that you want in the kitchen. And then where are those features in the cooking sequence? So, pull that back to that workflow idea. Then decide, does that particular feature, that center, that task fit within the triangle or outside the triangle? So we're taking the work triangle idea and seeing if we can fit in all of these other things that now happen in kitchens. So on the left-hand side here, we've got the basic triangle: sink, refrigerator, cooktop. In this column, we've got things that you should decide. Do they go inside or outside the triangle? So separate cooking appliances, cooktops and ovens, microwaves, a second or extra sink, recycling, trash, additional refrigeration, pantries, food storage, dishwashers. You need to take a look at each of those. How does your client plan to use these items, and decide inside or outside the triangle? There are some things that this author suggests should probably go outside the triangle. Those include a wine cooler or a beverage station, a coffee center, a desk or a computer for household management, and guest seating. All right, so the idea is these other additional functions, are they right in the center of the kitchen within the main workflow, or are they pulled outside of that main workflow? So we talked about how the work triangle was really built for one primary cook. How do you design a kitchen for multiple cooks? Here is one way. It's called the secondary work triangle. And what it is basically is two adjacent work triangles in one kitchen. The two cooks, will share one leg of the triangle, but they don't cross, okay? So they're not running into each other. So here's an example. In this kitchen right here, cook number one is using the primary sink, the shared refrigerator, and the shared stove. And so here's their triangle, and they're running around getting this meal ready. Okay. Cook number two, maybe they're making the dessert or the salad or whatever the secondary thing that they're making, all right, is sharing the refrigerator, sharing the stove in this particular example. Okay, so look, they have a shared leg of the triangle that they're running along in parallel, but they don't cross. That's important. And we've added a secondary sink. So there's a secondary prep center in this kitchen, and therefore two work triangles. So here is another example of a secondary work triangle from the kitchen planning textbook. In this case, we've got a primary triangle between this primary sink center, this cooking center, and your refrigeration center. And they've created a secondary triangle over here with a secondary prep sink and even another dishwasher. All right, so we've got one triangle, two triangles. Okay, this is a little less ideal because look, their triangles cross. Okay, so these people are going to run into each other a little bit. All right. Another thing to illustrate with this example is that we don't want any traffic to somewhere else in the house, for example, to this dining area, to go through our work triangle, either of them. Okay, so although the kitchen triangle So although the work triangle is the #1 kitchen layout design tool, there are some options and some tweaks that you can use to make it a little bit more sophisticated. One of those was the work zones or kitchen zones idea. Another is the open concept kitchen. Finally, we talked about the quote new kitchen triangle, in which secondary centers were either brought into the triangle or deliberately placed outside. And finally, we talked about how to add a second cook to your kitchen by creating a secondary work triangle. Thanks, everyone.